Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Friday's edition of Alaska Weather. On today's satellite, pretty nice day here across the southeast coast, a little breezy up across the northern areas with higher pressure in over the Yukon, and we've got pretty nice conditions across the Gulf of Alaska and North Gulf Coast. Back to the west, a lot of cold air continuing to come southward into the Bering Sea, and then the strongest push now down across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, but winds diminishing quite a bit here from St. Lawrence Island right down to the Pribilofs, down to 10 miles an hour or less this afternoon, really dropping off there at Unalaska Dutch Harbor as well, but still pretty gusty today. Across the Alaska Peninsula with gusts 35 to as high as 40 miles an hour out of the northwest. Lots of snow showers through here, diminishing toward Adak, or actually just about ending at Adak and Atka, kind of in a break there ahead of this next band, pushing some moisture in toward Shemya, and winds starting to increase this afternoon out toward Shemya and Attu. Otherwise, this band of clouds across central Alaska, the demarcation zone between the northerly winds out to the west, and then some southerly flow that's trying to get organized here and move northward. So this band edging eastward finally brought some snow into eastern Cook Inlet, but snow from the Susitna Valley, actually up here in the interior, all the way down across Kenai, where they're down to quarter-mile visibility in heavy snow at times this afternoon. Mostly, though, about a half mile, and that continuing into the late afternoon, and that's spreading up into Anchorage now. And this band really not going to move a whole lot over the next 2 days. Actually, the remnants of it still over the area Sunday afternoon. On the chart today, main low pressure area down at the surface, down there near Kodiak Island, with snow extending there again northward into the Alaska Range, back down toward Iliamna, but cutting off here over Bristol Bay. Another swath of snow there, and then high pressure in over the Yukon. So that tightening the gradient up there along the Alaska Range and to the north. So there are wind chill advisories for wind chills of 50 below zero tonight along the Yukon River in that area, and also breezy conditions here, gusty winds over the Panhandle, gales in Lynn Canal, and then lighter conditions down to the south, but dry there from Dixon Entrance northward across much of the eastern interior. And then a little bit of flurries and ice fog coming onto the western Arctic coast, and not really producing a lot of accumulation at all there, but generally 35 to 45 below zero north slope on out to the Arctic coast, southwest winds 5 to 15 miles an hour there. And then the snow shower conditions here for the Alaska Peninsula, and you can see a lot less lines than there were over the last several days here. So winds coming down very noticeably, St. Lawrence Island down to the Pribilofs, and then even lighter winds here under high pressure there over the central Aleutians, and the next storm making its way onto the edge of the map this afternoon. Tonight will spread gale force winds and snow in across the western Aleutians. Stays pleasant there across the central areas eastward, probably drying out, losing the snow showers altogether there for the eastern Aleutians. Still some light snow, patchy fog along the Alaska Peninsula. Winds gradually coming down there as well. Otherwise, really light wind conditions now covering much of the Bering Sea right into the western interior. Clear skies through here, temperatures back down well below zero, a little milder here with the clouds and snow to the east. And again, this band trying to edge eastward could spread some snow into western Prince William Sound, but quite narrow here up across the Talkeetna Mountains in the Alaska Range. A little bit wider swath there of light snow, Tanana Valley, all the way up to just about the eastern Arctic coast. And then no change really for the southeast coast, mostly clear skies here. So definitely dry conditions, high pressure sliding eastward a little bit, basically holding. Gale force winds continue Lynn Canal, and this moisture staying well to the south. And then for Saturday, not much change here, maybe a few more clouds, but any light snow that develops will be on the windward side of the mountains and stay east of the border. So really not looking at a lot of change for Saturday from what you saw today there for the southeast coast, as well as the North Gulf Coast. And we still have this narrow band of light snow over the Kenai Peninsula, right up across Anchorage, Palmer, the Matanuska Valley, maybe the Sitna Valley, but getting lighter now, but kind of holding in that area. And we've got a couple of troughs skirting the Arctic coast up there with some light snow and patchy ice fog. Nothing really significant. Winds not all that strong. Light variable winds here through the western interior from the north slope all the way down into Bristol Bay tomorrow, Alaska Peninsula. Winds light, maybe some clearing. Lingering snow showers out here over the Bering Sea, but not as extensive as they have been. Winds a lot lighter and actually starting to shift around now to the east, possibly southeast, here toward the Pribilos, but really light and variable about sum it up. And then you get into the gale force easterlies over the central Aleutians on out to the west with a chance of snow continuing for Adak and Atka right on the edge. Back to the southeast coast, this area of moisture here is starting to slip on up to the north, and it looks like that'll continue Saturday night. It'll come northwestward, staying mostly off the southeast coast there, although you may get grays along the coastline with a little bit of moisture, but the bulk of it will slip on up into the Gulf of Alaska. Some of that may work up into Yakutat, and then that's actually going to push this band back to the west. So chance of snow continues, mostly cloudy skies, Kenai Peninsula, up across Cook Inlet, Palmer, Wasilla, and right up to the Alaska Range, but this area very light and just really mostly clouds, which extends up to the Arctic coast. High pressure, fair conditions, mostly clear skies, could be a few clouds over the western interior right down into Bristol Bay. Kodiak Island, winds diminishing considerably there, or continuing to diminish, becoming light and variable into the afternoon Sunday, lasting into Sunday evening. Big storm coming into the Aleutians, 945 millibar low, moving to just southwest of Adak by Sunday afternoon. Strong front, gale storm force winds spreading into the eastern Aleutians. Milder conditions for rain, Unalaska, Nikolsky, possibly as far east as Falls Pass late in the day. May stay south of the Pribilos, but big increase in winds going on there out of the east, and increase in the winds here all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, but not that as strong as they will be down to the south. Arctic coast, no change up there. Still a very weak trough coming in from the west, maybe a few flurries, ice fog up there. But back to the west around this, strong northerly northeast winds, 55 to 60 knots in the forecast here from Shemya all the way over to Adak and Atka. Good for storms there, and even storms here in advance of the front as it pushes in across the eastern Aleutians. Temperatures across the Panhandle today, 34 Heidelberg, 30 degrees in Sitka. Juneau had 21, 17 McGrath, 15 Cordova. Mid to upper 20s here for Prince William Sound, 25 at Seward, 30 degrees in Homer. Freezing Kodiak, 10 degrees in Kenai, and single numbers there for the Susitna Matanuska Valley areas. 21 below Gulkana and Northway at 27 below. -7 at Delta with more wind there, -10 Fairbanks, and -18. Big temperature rise from yesterday for Tanana. And then on up to the north, we have -14 at Bettles, 29 below at Fort Yukon, -35 there at Arctic Village. Ambler, 45 below this afternoon, up from 51 below this morning, and staying well below zero back here over the northwest, and 35 to 45 below from the north slope, milder out along the western Arctic coast. And then down over the southwest interior, 10 to 20 below zero. Got 11 below at McGrath, to 20 below there at Bethel, and right around zero out toward the southwest coast, minus 13 Teller down to Savunga. And teens for the Pribilofs, 20s for the Aleutians, back up to 30 there at Shemya. And then we've got teens for the Alaska Peninsula right up to King Salmon. For the lows tonight, 26, forecast low for Kodiak, and below zero Copper River Basin. Teens and 20s for the Panhandle, west of the mountains, 20 to 25 below to 30 below in some cases up toward McGrath and Nikolai. Near 40 below, a little warmer than this morning there over the Kobuk and Noatak, Zelwick Valley areas, and 15 to 30 below for the Arctic coast, 15 for the Pribilofs, and 20s for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow, mid-30s out over the Aleutians, mid-20s for the Pribilofs, right at zero there around St. Lawrence Island. Well below zero west of the Alaska Range, southerly flow teens to near 20 coming into the Kenai Peninsula, and also north of the Alaska Range, temperatures stay below zero right up to the Arctic coast, and it looks like lower 20s to lower 30s for the Panhandle. Flying weather tomorrow, we've got a big area IFR here from the eastern or the southern slopes of the Eastern Brooks Range, right down across the Alaska Range and along that narrow band of snow here across Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula. VFR to the west, VFR to the east across the Panhandle, marginal VFR for the northwest, and marginal VFR in areas here from the Pribilofs down to the Alaska Peninsula. Break, and then more IFR pushing into the Aleutians, which tomorrow afternoon disappears. Now we've just got marginal conditions here for the central and west side there. VFR from Nikolsky across the Alaska Peninsula, areas of marginal VFR here to the north across the southwest coast, up across the Arctic coast. And now this IFR zone pushing back to the east a little bit, but again, that'll probably pull back to the west late tomorrow night and into Sunday. Anatuvik, occasionally marginal. Adigan, same forecast. Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR tomorrow. Rainy VFR. Windy, starting out IFR could become VFR, so call it marginal at times tomorrow. Isabel, though, more likely to see IFR conditions. Mentasta, possibly marginal or better. And for Tanita, IFR. Portage, occasionally IFR. Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, again, 2,000 feet, just clipping the southern coast here of the Panhandle there, just north of Dixon Entrance. Otherwise, the surface up along the coast, but well south, dropping off the map there, but beginning to recover out here over the western Aleutians. And icing with incoming moisture, areas of light rime icing from about Atka all the way out to Shemya above 3,000 feet, but nothing too significant. And a narrow band right through here of possible light trace amounts of rime icing from Kodiak Island right up to just east of Fort Yukon. And for the jet stream, well to the south, but coming northward here into the central Aleutians and then diving back down to the south, a trough right through here at this elevation, 33,000 feet. So the milder, cloudier, snowier conditions here along and east of the trough axis, but again, not very wide. Northwesterlies behind it. And for 9,000 feet, 20 to 30 knots here in a narrow band along the mountains down across the Alaska Peninsula. Lighter variable, southern Alaska up into the interior. Southwest 25 here over the Eastern Brooks Range, otherwise 20 knots along the Arctic coast. Winds not too bad over the Panhandle, and the next storm 30 to 40 knot winds, which will increase dramatically on Sunday and push northward. 3,000 feet, 30 to 40 knots even at this elevation. High pressure, light winds, eastern Bering Sea to the eastern Aleutians. Northwest 25 to 30, Kodiak Island, the peninsula. Light winds, southern Alaska. West-northwest 20 to 25 along portions of the Arctic coast. Otherwise, the Panhandle, mostly easterly at 10 to 15. And as far as turbulence goes, could be some mechanical light to isolated moderate chop here. Glacier Bay and Lynn Canal down along the east side. Lighter, more less bumpy here through the Copper River Basin. And then with that northwest wind flow pattern, Kodiak Island, occasional moderate chop from there up along and on the east side of the Alaska Range. Smooth along the southwest coast and much of the central northern interior to the Arctic coast. And then turbulence increasing out here to the west, but cutting off at about Atka, smooth over the eastern Bering Sea, Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. And after the break of Hangar Flying, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. Tonight we welcome back Lambert de Gaver. Lambert is a very experienced pilot with over 30,000 hours and in 150 different aircraft. When you ask him, he prefers helicopters, which is fine, but he's got some pretty good stories about fixed wing as well. And he's been involved in, he started out in gliders and he's towed gliders, but currently does some flight reviews in fixed wing aircraft. But I want to talk about a specific area tonight. Lambert was born in Switzerland, and I know he goes back occasionally, but welcome, Lambert. Talk a little bit about flying in Europe and how it compares.
There's a lot of controlled airspace, and you have to pay fees everywhere. And that's something what we don't want here. You have to pay a landing fee, an ATC fee, a noise tax. Each aircraft has to have a noise certificate, and then depending on how loud it is, you have to pay fees over that. If you fly in a bigger aircraft that is heavier, these fees go by weight, then your ATC fee goes up too, and it's just not a very good system. What we have is much better, where all the money comes out of the taxes on the fuel and from other sources.
Is Switzerland pretty much like the rest of Europe?
Switzerland is relatively liberal compared to the rest of the Europe, where countries like the Netherlands are really, really restrictive.
Now you had made some interesting remarks about the FAA, I think complimentary remarks. How do they compare to a similar organization in Europe?
I think our FAA is just super good because they invite input from the users. There's always these meetings we can go to where people tell what the new plan is or ask what people think. And I think that is really, really good.
Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to hear that. And I know you flight reviews with pilots. What areas do you stress, and what areas do you think are the weakest that you see?
We kind of look at what the regulations want, and the FAA came out with that series of little booklets, like one of us off-airport flying, the other seaplane flying, and I also have one about flight reviews. That's what I use as a guide. And then it's a little bit tailored. Like most people I know have been flying for a long time, and they kind of know what's going on. A lot of people who have been flying for a long time and have not flown professionally or not have been kind of mentored, have picked up all kinds of bad habits, and you know, they don't know about airspace or how to talk on the radio or things like that.
Well, obviously that's why we have flight reviews, and it's nice to have a professional CFI like you out there and helping these folks who definitely need a little bit of polish.
The information is out there, but a lot of people don't know how to get it. They always think you have to get online. If you look in the facility directory, there's a lot of good information there.
Sure.
And how to find what airport has what type of traffic pattern, and how you enter it, things like that. I think that's good.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about traffic patterns and the need to standardize, particularly where there's no tower. Talking about helicopter flying, what's the most challenging aspect of flying helicopters in Alaska?
I think the flying in the winter when there's a whiteout and flat light, and that is something that a lot of people, in my opinion, don't take seriously enough, because there's repeatedly accidents with that. It's just that different people are making the same accident and doing the same thing wrong. I think the first warning should be that if you have to slow down, that something is not right, and then you should start thinking, what is my plan B or my plan C or D?
It's interesting you say that, because I've always said that there really aren't any new accidents. There's just different faces and different names, different tail numbers. So, how would you compare the flying in Alaska with the lower 48? A lot of difference?
I think the lower 48, there's an airport every 30 miles where you can get gas or land and stuff. We don't have that. We have a large geographical area with different meteorological conditions. Flying in southeast is completely different than on the slope. Each has its own challenges, and each brings its own dangers. And we need to be able to be able to turn things up or can turn things down. Sometimes you can go and do a lot, and sometimes it's just better, you know, to wait a little bit or not do it or wait for another time.
Exactly.
You know.
Lambert, we got about a minute left. I want to ask you a question I usually ask our guests. What one thing could we as pilots do to make flying safer in Alaska?
I think a lot of people should pay more attention to the basics. If you read always about these moose stalls, I think if you can make a circle in an aircraft without stalling it, you know, that's student pilot lesson number 2 or something like that. I mean, and that kind of keeps happening. I mean, putting electronic devices in there like angle of attack indicators is kind of masking the problem. I mean, somebody's doing something wrong, and this is just not really fixing the problem.
Yeah. Interesting. You would say that because I'm a big fan of angle of attack, but you're exactly right. I mean, we're still talking about you got to go back to basics. Doesn't have,
yeah.
In fact, sometimes the tech gear that we put in airplanes distracts us.
Exactly.
And takes us away from the
yeah.
basics. But we've run out of time again. Thanks for being on the program and sharing with our viewers. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's program. Please check out our website, www.aasfonline.org, or like us on Facebook. And until next time, fly safe.
Welcome back. For tomorrow, east 25 on the south coast, the northeast winds on up the remainder of the coastline, 20 to 30 knots, higher gusts, and then 40 knot northerlies for Lynn Canal, dropping back to about 30 knots there for Stevens Passage, and 20 knots for Clarence Strait. We'll swing around to the southeast on Sunday and pick up to 25 knots there. Same wind forecast for the extreme southern coast, but lighter southeast winds on up the coastline, east 20 on the extreme north coast. Prince William Sound, northeast winds at 15 knots, northeast 10 to 15 for Cook Inlet. Gale force northwesterlies here for Kamishak Bay, dropping back to 25 knots for the Barrens, on down across Kodiak Island, Shelikof Strait, lighter winds for the North Gulf Coast. And then for Sunday, northwesterlies at about 20 here for the western North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, light variable winds for Prince William Sound and Cook Inlet. Small craft advisories, northwesterlies coming out of Kamishak Gap there, right down across the Barren Islands. No change here for Kodiak Island, except a little lighter across Shelikof Strait. Bristol Bay, north at 15, 3-foot seas. Northwest, 10 to 15 for the Alaska Peninsula. Small craft advisories here southwest of Sitkinak. And those swing around to the east and pick up to 25 knots late in the day. Forecast to start out northwest at 25 early in the day on Sunday. And then a big increase in the winds here, 45 knots east southeast for the Alaska Peninsula. Seas 10 to as high as 20 feet. And for the Aleutians, tomorrow, light winds for the east side here, and then picking up 30 to 35 knots, central Aleutians, and then minimum gales all the way out to the west. And then for, let's see, for Sunday, actually Saturday night, big increase in the winds will start, and then Sunday we've got east-northeast, 55 to 60 knots here from the central Aleutians all the way out to the east, with seas building pretty good, 28 to 34 feet through here. Southeast 40 knots south of Adak and Atka, with storm force southeast winds here right up across the Fox Islands, as high as 55 knots with building seas to 23 feet. And then for the southwest coast, light northerlies along the entire area there, right up to St. Lawrence Island. Actually become light and variable tomorrow there. Northeast 15, St. Matthew Island, light winds for the Pribilofs, and then east 45 coming in, especially by Sunday afternoon there for St. Paul, and earlier, a little earlier for St. George. Easterlies picking up to 30 knots here for the southwest coast. Northeast 20, St. Lawrence Island, 30 knots for the northern Bering Sea. And for the Arctic coast, central coast demarcation point tomorrow, southwest 15 knots, westerlies at 15 knots here all the way down to the Bering Strait. And then for Sunday, not really much change except getting pretty light and variable here from Wales to Cape Beaufort. Southwest there, all the way up to the central coast, actually all the way over to Demarcation Point. Really pretty uniform light wind pattern here for the entire stretch of the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And for tonight, again, light snow continues. Kenai Peninsula, across northern Cook Inlet, Turnagain, Connect Arms, up along the mountains there, kind of iffy for the Susitna Valley, especially west of the Parks Highway. Extensive snow, light snow, Tanana Valley to the eastern Arctic coast. Breaking out behind it, gusty winds, fair conditions here, mostly clear skies for the Panhandle, and a weakening front. The first one spinning out of the developing low will bring some wind and snow into the western Aleutians. That won't spread too far to the east, maybe Atka or to Adak tomorrow. Basically dry along the Arctic coast, the interior, high pressure with clearing out to the west, gusty northwest winds along the Alaska Range, Kodiak Island, but this area band of snow persisting mostly in place here. Dry conditions to the both west and east. And then for the day on Sunday, that next storm again moving up the way it looks at this point in time toward Adak with a 945 millibar center, so a very tight gradient. We've got strong northeast winds, 55 to 60 knots coming out on the west side of that feature with the colder temperatures. Milder conditions, looks mostly rain there for Adak Atka. Storm force southeasterlies into the eastern Aleutians, bringing the temperatures up, so snow will change over to rain if it just doesn't start out rain to begin with. But the big picture, the increase in the winds there, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, but staying pretty dry here for much of the peninsula until maybe Sunday night, and definitely dry with a lot of clearing here along the eastern Bering Sea. Lighter winds taking longer to increase there towards St. Lawrence Island, but pretty good clearing here over the western interior, all the way up to the Brooks Range. Few snow flurries grazing the western Arctic coast, and still chance of snow here across Cook Inlet to the western Alaska Range. Snow showers building out over the Gulf of Alaska, kind of skirting the southeast coast with a little bit of an increase in the winds. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you again tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
If you're interested in serving on your local Federal Subsistence Regional Advisory Council, the deadline to apply is Friday, February 3rd. Call 1-800-478-1456 for more information.